You mentioned Phil Haney, and he, he's very close to our hearts. He's in our thoughts and prayers, and very connected to everything that's happening to you. He passed, but under very suspicious circumstances. And the authorities initially were saying something about how it looked like a suicide or something, but there's quite a bit of evidence to suggest that he was actually murdered. We would like to know the truth. We don't know for sure, but the FBI investigation is not going that quickly, just like it hasn't gone that quickly with some other circumstances. I just want to spend a minute just to give him our attention and our love, and because he was ordered to scrub a lot of information by the people above him. He was in the DHS, and he knew quite a lot. Annie, could you speak a little bit on Phil and where the case stands?
Absolutely. Well, as of right now, it is concluded, and the FBI investigation concluded the case as a suicide because magically, after almost 2 years, they found a suicide note. They claim they found it back then, but the original report shows no record of a suicide note. Myself, Leah Holman, Brannon House, and I believe Pete Santelli, we did a full coverage of this, showing all the evidence as to why we believe this was a homicide. But as you said, Jamie, Phil Haney was he was a patriot and a truth teller that didn't back down when they tried to corner him. So I strongly believe they had to, take him out, and they did. And like many other suicides that has been going on in America or Western countries that all of us know it wasn't a suicide. I will personally refuse to believe for a second for the rest of my life that someone like Phil Haney would ever even consider suicide. On a personal level, he was a follower of Christ, would have never take his life. On a patriotic side of life, he's done so much for all of us in this country that there's no way he would take his life. On that note, aside the fact that I don't trust FBI for a second, nor do I trust the shadow government for a second, but that aside, just knowing Phil Haney on a personal level and having the honor to share a stage with him in many different events, he did not kill himself. They killed him and made it look like suicide.
Just tragic. I share what you're saying, Annie. I knew Phil as well. Just unimaginable that he would commit suicide. Also, just such a strange investigation, and just so many factors in that whole story that just don't add up. Leo, in terms of them making your book disappear, in terms of Amazon making your book disappear, in terms of our friend Phil Haney, let me hand it over to you in terms of this connection here.
Well, yeah, I mean, first they made Phil disappear, right? And now they've made my major work disappear. So you have to hand it to them. They're playing hardball. I mean, I agree with everything Annie said. The evidence for a suicide is simply not there. Family members even said this does not at all look like Phil's handwriting, this note that they produced after 2 years. There were other fingerprints on the gun besides Phil's. They tried to say that Phil's fingerprints were the most prominent, but that they had to admit that there was at least one or two other people's fingerprints on the gun. So, and I agree with what you said about Phil himself. I knew him very well. There's no way he would have committed suicide. He was the strongest Christian role model, older man, besides my own father, that I had in my entire life. So, to postulate that someone of his integrity and his Christian faith would take their own life, and then to present this weak evidence for it, weak weak at best, was just it was really a slight on Phil and his entire life. And the FBI, this should have never been turned over to the FBI for investigation. The county sheriff there in California should have handled this within his own department, but instead he turned it over to the FBI. And as soon as that happened, we all knew that it was not going to have a good outcome. And sure enough, they sat on it for well over a year. And then they come out with this bogus verdict, sweep it under the rug. And to my knowledge, maybe Annie can speak to this as well, but to my knowledge, we've never seen the book that he was working on, which I'm told was like 90% complete or more. We've never seen any evidence that they returned his laptop and the drives, the computer drives that were taken. And we're just supposed to accept this. Sit down, shut up, and take the medicine. Your friend has been basically made a non-person. And they're trying to do the same to me because I'm not maybe quite as well known as Phil. So they think that they can get rid of me perhaps before I do become more well known by taking my book off of Amazon. And we found out from the Twitter files that when social media companies take action against people to silence them, the impetus for that usually came from the government. It was someone in the FBI, someone in the White House, someone in the CIA who contacted Twitter and said, you know what, we don't like this guy's tweets. You need to silence them. And so why should we believe that it happens any differently at Amazon?